What's up, everybody? It's guubums back with another comp guide video. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a competitive player from NA. I'm a former rank 1. I've been rank 1 pretty much every set since I've started playing. And yeah, today I got a new video. So at the start here, I'm going to show you kind of like a tier list of the different types of units. So for those of you who don't know, like kind of how the patch has developed is that there was a B patch that kind of patched away some of the more broken things in the meta, which notably at the time was Kai'Sa and Gnar. So right now, for those of you guys who have kind of played TFT for a long time, you've probably heard about streamers or like other content creators talk about something like flex play. Pretty much right now, the patch is actually really good for a level 8 flex play. I think one of the limitations about the patch is that there's not going to be that many reroll comps. There's really only just one viable one right now. But outside of that, flex play is kind of like really strong. So I think in today's guide, I'm going to actually like talk about kind of the units and the different packages you can play as you level. And I think that's actually going to be a lot more important than kind of like looking for exactly what type of comps you want to really be playing. That being said, if you guys are just interested in looking for the comps that you want to be playing, there's going to be timestamps below. So if you want to just skip to like XYZ comp and you want to learn how to play XYZ comp, this video is for that too. But I really think given how the meta has been shaping up, understanding like the different packages you can play is actually really important for kind of climbing and just like doing well altogether. And it will actually help you play each individual comp as well. So the strongest unit in the game right now is Lissandra, bar none. She's the strongest 5 cost in the game, and she goes on every single board. She has pretty reasonable traits given how like certain other kind of units in her these trait trees kind of got buffed. So Arcanist 2 gives AP to your entire team. It's really easy to fit in. It's also really not important to fit in. She also is a trait twin with Lux. So Lux and Lissandra both have pretty much, you put them together and you get 2 porcelain and 2 Arcanists are free. So that's also really easy to play. That being said, most of the time when you play Lissandra, you're not really going to be playing Lux, but pretty much the point of the, I guess the memo is that Lissandra is extremely broken and you should be playing her on pretty much every board. Just because like she deals with tanks really well, she offers a lot of CC, and pretty much all comps right now want to get to level 8, hit their Lissandra, and just start abusing Lissandra for as long as possible, just because she generates resources in ways that pretty much no other unit in the game really can. So yeah, she's really powerful. Other really strong units right now are some of the frontliners. Annie, Nautilus are probably the 2 strongest individual ones, just because Annie is traitless. So obviously she's fortunate, she's Invoker. Neither of these traits really matter that much. They don't benefit Annie all that much. You can play obviously Fortune and Invoker to make your Annie stronger or your team stronger in different ways, but you obviously don't have to. So if you hit an Annie 2 while rolling at level 7, level 8, mostly level 8, she's going to be strong no matter what. And you really want to kind of just itemize her, or even don't itemize her, and she's going to be like a really strong frontline anchor for your team. Something similar is true about Nautilus. If you guys have played the set thus far, you would know that Nautilus has probably been the worst unit in the game, or close to it. That is no longer true. After the buffs to 4 costs, I guess like survivability across the board, Nautilus has been casting with very little investment. If you invest more into him, it is possible to get him to ult twice. I think high investment on Nautilus is still probably incorrect, just because it is really difficult to get him to ult twice. 160 total mana, there's a lot of mana reave in the game. Soraka, Shroud, and Lee Sin are all popular, so it's probably not worth super over investing into him. That being said, if he's your only upgraded 4 cost frontliner at level 8, it is still fine to put items onto him, and especially early into stage 5 or like late stage 4, sometimes even late stage 5, you can expect him to ult twice, probably like once every other round, which is pretty useful. Next up we have Sylas. He's like a bruiser both in trait and in terms of like kind of like how he plays, so you build bruiser items on him. I think he's a decent outlet for kind of BT if you slammed it early, just because BT is a really strong early game slam. Otherwise, like putting him with some of the AP frontline items such as like Crown Guard, Adaptive Helm, Spark is really powerful. I guess those 3 items specifically altogether are probably going to be best in slot. BT's fine as well, obviously, but he's like a good outlet for kind of like putting those items. Also goes on pretty much every board. You can play with Bruiser, you also don't have to play with Bruiser. Galio I'd say is a little bit on the weaker side right now, so his like standard pairing that you would normally do with Sylas is not that viable, not that strong. That being said, obviously if you have a Galio 2, Sylas 2, it's really easy to put them onto your boards. We're going to be talking about kind of like the different types of boards you can play with these a little bit later on. Kayn, same idea. He's just a pretty borderline a traitless unit. Ghostly 2 is really strong. That pairs well with Morgana, pairs well with Aatrox are probably going to be the 2 most common ones that you find him with. Also pairs well with Lawi, which once again pairs well with Lissandra because she's an Arcanist and a Warden. Naturally a Mumu is also a Porcelain. So I don't know, it just all goes together really well. So Kayn's is like another unit that if you just upgrade him, he's really good to carry. We'll be talking about a Kayn carry comp a little bit later as well, but even just as an upgraded unit, he's really strong to put on your board. And then as for some of these units, the reason why I put them in the A tier, mostly Ashe and Kai'Sa, is just because they are backline units, so you're not going to be able to put an Ashe 2 and a Kai'Sa 2 on every board. That being said, they are really strong carries on level 8 right now, so yeah, I put them in the A tier. Not too much to talk about them. We'll be talking about them in their specific comps a little bit later on. Morgana right now is a really strong unit. She received a buff 2 patches ago. A little bit interesting thing about Morgana is that she's really, really weak into single target damage. Obviously, she does like next to no single target damage, and her chill effect is not really all that relevant in most fights. That being said, because rerolls got nerfed, so you saw Volibear and Yone kind of dominating the meta last patch. Neither of these two are really in the meta at all, so that makes something like Morgana really, really strong. So if other people are playing like backline carries such as Ashe, Kai'Sa, and Lillia, then Morgana will, immediately backline, put her ability down on the backline, and it'll do like probably like 50 to 60% of their HP. Obviously, a second cast or some chip damage from somewhere else will finish them off, and you'll quickly win the fight. Furthermore, her tags are really, really powerful. Obviously, Ghostly, 2 Ghostly, 4 Ghostly, 6 Ghostly are all have their uses, but 2 Ghostly specifically is extremely, extremely strong. And Sage is a really easy to fit trait right now, just because Diana is a Dragon Lord, also has the Sage tag. Dragon Lord is a really good splash trait. Wukong obviously also is a Heavenly Sage, which is even better because Heavenly is an even better splash trait than Dragon Lord probably. And Wukong is just a strong 5+ unit that you use to cap out your board most of the time. Gnar and Ornn, Ornn, same idea that he has been nerfed, but he's still extremely strong. Just a standard frontliner, pairs well with Azir, pairs well with any behemoth, doesn't really matter. Ornn 2 can fit on your board and he'll always cast, always give you an item. Obviously, if you invest into him, he's going to be really strong as well. Gnar, I just put here just because he's the only reroll comp. Not all that relevant to kind of like what I'll be talking about. I will talk about the comp a little bit further in the video, but not all that relevant. Okay, so very quickly, I want to kind of just like talk about the packages. I mentioned them a little bit kind of like in the previous segment to the video, but these are really, really important. So pretty much like because the meta is just all about going level 8 and like finding the best frontline to pair with any random backliner that you hit, whether it be Lillia, Ashe, Kai'Sa, or Morgana, really, they're all viable. You really have to think about like the frontline packages you can play. So one of the kind of like more obscure ones is kind of like Annie, Azir, and Ornn. Functionally, all 3 of these units are traitless. It doesn't really matter. Like obviously, as you cap out, like this is kind of like the level 9 cap out board, one of the versions of it, just because like you're capping around like 5 costs. Obviously, like this is fine even if you don't have Azir, right? You just play Annie, Ornn as your frontline. You can just put like a random behemoth. Shen tends to be a good one just because it's really easy to get Ghostly from somewhere. Malphite, same idea. It's really easy to get Heavenly from somewhere, so tends to be really strong. Sylas, Galio. Sylas is just one of the best units in the game right now, so just like playing 2 Bruiser, very simple stuff. 4 Dragon Lord, this has always been, I guess, powerful. It did get nerfed, so it's a little bit weaker, and it does give you some frontline in the form of Lee Sin and Janna and Rakan, and in the form of the stun in general. It is effective HP on your board to some degree, just because it slows the enemy team down from kind of like outputting damage, but yeah, this is an important package, but probably less relevant currently than it has been. And this is probably the most relevant package as of the new patch. It's just Nautilus, Amumu, and Lissandra. Lissandra, once again, is being played with any board possible, but this is probably the best package that best enables her. Nautilus is really, really strong right now. Amumu is just always really, really strong, super tanky for its cost, a super easy unit to have upgraded. So if you say you have upgraded Amumu from stage 3, then it's really easy to just carry him, even with items way late into stage 5 to stage 6, just because his traits are so good, his ability is so good, and just in general, just a really, really strong unit. So just like kind of like really look for these types of packages, and you have to think about when you're playing level 8 flex in the current set, they also just buff Exalted, which is so important because there's so many different Exalted packages you can play. Off the top of my head, I don't know all the Exalted packages, but just like if you check it early game, you can kind of like visualize some of the different ideas you can play. This kind of like sheet might help you a little bit, just because like, for example, I know for a fact there's a Lee Sin, Kayn, Malphite one. That one's going to be really easy. Because you're just playing Heavenly Kayn and you just play Lee Sin, Kayn, and Malphite. That one's really easy. Another one is like there's like a Sylas, Kayn, Annie one, I believe. You can play Annie on every board, and you can play Sylas on every board. So you just pretty much are just playing around Kayn, and you just play Sylas, Annie. That being said, I don't know if that's actually a real one. I could have just made that up. There's a Galio, Annie, Malphite one. That one's also really easy to play. Galio, you could just pair with Sylas. Annie, once again, is traitless, so you can just play Annie on any board, and Malphite pairs really well with pretty much any behemoth or any Heavenly, so that's really easy to play around. So just like pretty much looking at your Exalted and like seeing the different types of kind of boards you can play with it is going to be like really, really helpful, just because at level 8 it's a free 14% damage for your entire team. Because comps are like very not that rigid right now, it seems. It's just really important to like understand like the different packages you can play, and like especially Exalted being like obviously changing every game. Like early game, depending on like what the Exalted is, you can like play for a certain build-up of them. In the late game, so you want to slam items that kind of like direct you one way versus the other. I believe there's an Ashe, Galio, Teemo one. I don't remember I think some of the other ones in that one are pretty important. I think there's like a Malphite, maybe. I don't know. I keep saying Malphite, so I'm worried I'm getting a little bit confused on like what the Exalted actually is. But there is a Teemo, Ashe, Azir one. And that one you could play like there's like a comp that really hasn't really been played much. Is like it was played in PBE, but it's like Senna, Ashe, Kai'Sa, and you build a board around Senna, Ashe, Kai'Sa. Obviously, Teemo gives you trick shot, and you can get exalted that way. Just like either you play like, I don't know, Malfighter, whoever actually the exalted might be in that package, you could just play, right? So it's really important just to kind of like think about that. Now, all that being said, you guys are probably here just for the comps video. This stuff is important, but you know, I know what you guys are here for. So first of all, we have trick shots. I know like the board is a little bit cluttered because once again, you really have to think about this comp in terms of packages. The main, I guess, like core of this comp really just comes from just playing trick shots. It's Kai'Sa, Teemo, Sivir, and Xayah. Most people play 4. I think on average you're going to be playing 4 very, very often. That being said, it is sometimes correct to drop down to 2 so you don't have Teemo items. You just play Kai'Sa, Xayah. You play the 4 Dragon Lord version. So Kai'Sa, Xayah, you play all the Dragon Lords and you just like fill it up with random stuff. That being said, you can play Kai'Sa, Xayah with 4 trick shot as well. And I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff to do. I think the main board you should probably be thinking about is this 4 Bruiser 4 trick shot version. It plays on level 8. It gives you 2 out of 3 Ink Shadow, so you very easily fit in Udyr at 9 to get give yourself 3 Ink Shadow. That often gives you an item for your Xayah or your Kai'Sa. Otherwise, like say it's protection, it gives you a frontline item, so it's really, really strong. You just itemize Galio. Very basic stuff. I talked about this in a past video. You guys have almost undoubtedly seen this to some degree here or there in your games. Kind of like the more important part of this is, once again, we're talking about like these different types of packages you can play, right? Like you don't always have Galio 2, Solace 2 on 8, but maybe you hit an Ornn 2 or you hit an Amumu 2. And like, so if you once again, if you hit a Amumu 2, it's really easy to play it with Nautilus and Lissandra. Jax as well is an Ink Shadow Warden. So say you have Udyr, Jax, you hit Udyr 1 and you have a Jax 2, you can play that with Nautilus. You don't have to play around the bruisers. You can play 2 bruiser, whether that be Aatrox Galio, Aatrox Solace, or Aatrox Riven. It doesn't really matter. You get 3 Ink Shadow with Jax, and then you get Nautilus for Warden, and you maybe play, you know, Udyr as well. Maybe you don't have to play Aatrox, you play Ornn. I don't know. There's just so many different frontline options you can play with this comp. You do, once again, want to be looking to fit in a Lissandra where you can. So it's just like really important to like be wary of the different types of options that your shops are giving you as you're rolling down on level 8, because you will not always be able to hit that Solace 2 Galio 2. That being said, if you do hit Solace 2 Galio 2, this comp is pretty straightforward. There's no generic augment other than Lucky Ricochet that kind of like benefits this comp more than others. Obviously you'll always have stuff like Martyr, Best Friends, Pumping Up, I don't know, all the generic combat augments, Combat Caster. These augments are just going to be good for pretty much every comp, but the only one like specific augment for this comp is Lucky Ricochet. Next up, we have a relatively new comp, but it's not going to look that unfamiliar. It's just Heavenly Kayn. Functionally speaking, the Yone comp from last patch was a Kayn comp. I think especially at lower elos, you'll see a lot of people just like hard forcing Yone 3 when their position to do so is actually like not that optimal. But I think like at higher elos, you'll have noticed a lot of people are playing around. They just get Yone 2 and then they push levels to play around Kayn 2. This comp is really, really much the same. That being said, Yone sucks, so it doesn't really matter that much. You, like pretty much now instead of playing Yone, you're playing Kayn. Like it's the same thing, but you're just going level 8 to do it. And you play, this is like, the left side is probably the standard package. These 6 units are like the core units that you're playing. Most people are playing Lee Sin Diana right now. It gives you Sage and Dragon Lord and Duelist, and another unit to carry Lee Sin with. I think your positioning, generally, you want Kayn Lee Sin on the edges, just to blow through someone's front line, and then just walk to the back line. Morgana holds your generic AP items. Blue Morello, very, very standard setup for almost any like backline AP carry. Blue Morello, Adaptive Morello, Shojin Morello, all that fun stuff. Point is, she's your Morello holder. Best in slot Kayn. The only thing that probably really matters a lot is this GA item or Edge of Night item. Not Today is probably the second best augment for this comp behind Heavenly Crest, but I'll just put Heavenly. You can't do that. Yeah, the only thing that really matters within this comp is that you have a Morello. It's really easy to get. It's just Rod Belt. Those are pretty low value items right now, just because like people aren't really playing around AP that much. Belt in general is a pretty weak defensive component, so Morello is really easy to build. It's still one of the best items in the game. And after a short hiatus, Riot has once again made Lost Whisper the single best item in the game, after it has probably historically been a top 3 item in TFT, maybe even first, depending on like different patches, different metas, all that fun stuff. But Lost Whisper is broken. You'll notice in this comp, Lost Whisper is also Vis, and you'll notice that in any 80 comp, Lost Whisper is Vis. So build your Lost Whisper and just like try to find your way into one of these comps. Otherwise, this comp uses GA. Ideally, you get a healing item on Kayn. Stuff like Harmissa, stuff like Heavenly Crest will make it slightly less important to get a healing item on Kayn. I believe Hodge is the best one. BT is perfectly fine. Even Gunblade is perfectly fine because you can itemize more than just Kayn, so your Kayn doesn't have to do all the work. Unlike, for example, when you're used to be playing 3-star Yone, Yone would have to do all the work, so you really would have to be looking for BIS or close to BIS items on Yone. Anyways, yeah. Moving on from kind of like that is that we have to talk about the packages you can play with this comp. Something I've noticed people are playing to a lot of success is just playing Silas. I think it's especially good with Reaper Crest. So if you get Reaper Crest, then you play Yone, you get 2 Umbral and 4 Reaper. So this is like pretty standard. You can put Reaper Crest on either Morgana or Silas. It doesn't really matter that much, whichever one you have items for. Same idea as before, you are going to be putting like tanky AP items on Silas. Crown Guard is probably his single best item. Spark is really strong. BT is fine, Hodge is fine, just pure tank items also fine. I don't know, pretty standard stuff. You don't actually have to play Yone either, like if you don't have it. It gives you Umbral, but like a lot of people are baited by the Umbral hexes to miss position, and that's really bad, so don't do that. I know it's going to be difficult, like if you see the Umbral hexes, you're going to want to put your Umbral units and your carries onto those hexes. That being said, like sometimes you put it here, and someone just has the Lysandra, and your Kayn gets Lysandra on the first cast, and you just lose the fight. Try not to greed the Umbral hexes too much. That being said, it is quite powerful on your Silas just because it's a 10% execute. It's like, you know, it's a decent amount of damage. And you're capping out this comp with, what a surprise, you're playing the Heavenly 5 cost, and you're playing Lysandra, which is more or less what you're doing with every single comp. So yeah, as you kind of get to level, like late into level 8 and into level 9, you're just putting in Wukong, you're putting in Lysandra. You can't really go wrong. Like you can itemize them, you should itemize them, but they're not going to be your priority just because you're not going to be able to consistently hit them when you need to spike on level 8, which is generally 4-2, 4-5, whenever you choose to roll down. All right, next up we have like what is essentially an Ashe flex comp. Once again, the team builder is going to look all over the place, but that's just because there's so many different like packages you can play. I'd say the core units you really play with this comp are like Ashe plus a sniper. Most of the time you're going to find that to be Kayn. I would say a Mumu and Nautilus, so I guess like these 4 units, but obviously you're going to be level 8 most of the time when you're playing this comp, so you have 4 more units to play. I think ideally you always play 4 Porcelain with Lux and Lysandra. Lysandra's a 5 cost, you're not always going to have that, so in the meantime you can play 4 Warden, you play a Lowy plus another Warden. Probably the best one is just going to be a, you know, like a garbage 1 cost. These aren't very good, but gives you 4 Warden, it's okay. Gives you Ghostly, it's okay. Otherwise, if you don't want to play around like these warning units, once again, Orange Shen goes into every comp. This gives you 2 Behemoth, gives you 4 frontline units. I think the kind of like the issue with this comp really is that you struggle to find a duo carry. So you'll notice in like these comps, like you have like it's like more Kayn duo carry, right? Like or like Kayn Silas duo carry, or like Kayn more duo carry, right? Or Lee Sin Kayn duo carry. In this comp, it's like Kai'Sa Teemo duo carry or Kai'Sa Xayah duo carry. And yes, Teemo's a 2 cost, but at the same time, Teemo's really strong as a 2 cost. So like being able to duo carry Kai'Sa and Teemo is actually super valuable. I think in this comp, you'll find that like the core units, you don't really have an obvious duo carry. Obviously, if you get a Kayn 2, if you get a Lee Sin 2, if you get a Morgana 2, you could always put these units on your board. I can't stress that enough. Like if I have Morgana and I have like say like a tier, it doesn't even have to be like a full mana item, but I have a Morello just because like, wow, I built a Morello, right? This is one of the best items in the game. From the early game, I just slap down a Morgana, I get 2 Ghostly, it's pretty good. And then say I have a tier, I can go for a blue buff, Shojin, or Adaptive Help. Doesn't really matter all that much, and eventually it'll find its way onto my Morgana, probably late stage 5. Suddenly I have a duo carry. But like it's not that obvious like what type of duo carries you want to be playing with this comp, right? Because like the core, once again, the core units you're playing are not going to have an obvious duo carry. So you do have to be looking out for like, okay, how do I play like a random Silas onto my board just to give my team a little bit of damage? That being said, if you have an itemized Lysandra, like, okay, you hit a Lysandra on 8, you're very good, or whatever, you put items on Lysandra, now you have a duo carry, right? But that being said, you do have to be a little bit creative with this comp on like trying to find a duo carry of some kind. Silas, Kayn, Morgana are kind of like the obvious ones. Kayn is really good just because you already have Lost Whisper from your Ashe, you already have Ghostly somewhere, Caitlyn, Shen, Alawi, very easy stuff. So yeah, just be a little bit kind of like cognizant about that. This comp has like pretty much no specific augments that kind of like boost its power a lot, just because all the sniper augments suck, and if you're taking Boiling Point, then you're playing a different comp, you're probably not going to be playing around Ashe. So that being said, Boiling Point is good for this comp, so like don't sleep on it. That being said, if you have Boiling Point early, you're probably not going to be thinking about playing Ashe, you're going to be playing Lux Reroll. I haven't talked about that ever, but if you guys are familiar with Boiling Point, you guys will know what I'm talking about. That being said, generic attack speed augments I think are really strong with this comp, just because Ashe scales off attack speed very well. Even Lysandra scales off like attack speed very well. So like obviously you're just getting more casts and you're gonna be kind of like outputting more damage. Finally, you're just capping out with standard 5 costs, you know, Udyr, Set, Wukong 2, Rakan 2, Lysandra 2. Very standard cap out. Next up, we have Lillia. Now, this is definitely not a new comp. We've all seen this comp. It hasn't been very good because Nautilus sucks and Lillia is also kind of suck. There are so many ways to play this comp. Like I don't want to like just keep repeating myself, but like you really just have to be thinking about this comp like you're playing these 3 units most of the time, or like Lillia, Nautilus really, and then like plus a third mythic unit. The thing is, the third mythic unit could be like anything, right? Like obviously Hui fits really well because he's a mythic. Obviously Azir fits really well because he's an invoker, right? Like you don't play Janna. In that case, Lissandra fits really well, or sorry, Nico fits really well just because once again, every comp wants to be playing Lissandra. Lissandra pairs well with a Mumu, who also pairs with Nautilus. Where have we seen this before? I don't know. Every single comp that I've showed today. You play a Mumu, Nautilus, and Lissandra, right? Once again, you're playing Annie. In this comp, she's actually has a trait. She gives you 4 invoker. Alun and Lillia actually do really well together just because Alun spreads some damage onto their backline and Lillia is good at finishing them off. It's not like attack by any means. It's just like the unit synergy, not from traits, actually provides some value, and you do have to think about that a little bit when you're trying to build a team comp in TFT. It's like Hui and Lillia also tend to synergize quite well because Hui does a lot of spread damage through which Lillia can finish them off. Lillia does struggle with like single target damage, so like how do we get single target damage with this comp? Azir is one of the ways. Alun, once again, is kind of single target damage just because after all the I guess like low HP units die, then Lillia and Alun will be able to finish off a high HP unit so long as you have some frontline remaining. Annie's the tankier version, or tankier one of the 2 frontliners. That being said, once again, if you want to invest into Nautilus, it's completely fine. Oftentimes you're going to be playing like 5 mythic even as like transitionary kind of like setup because you don't always have these legendaries. So like that could look like, I don't know, TK. Say you do have a Hui, right? Then it's really easy to play 5 mythic. If you have a mythic crest, then we don't even have to play this worthless Tom Kench, and we get 5 mythic anyway. It's still easy to fit an invoker. Obviously, most of the time it's going to be Janna instead of Azir, but as you cap out with this comp, it's really easy to cap out just because so many legendaries fit well with this comp. Even Set, okay, Set kind of sucks. Try not to cap out with Set if you can help it, but it's not that bad. Obviously, before you have Lissandra, you can play Nico in this comp, or sorry, you can play Lux in this comp. Once again, obviously they have the same traits. Lux provides some sort of CC. It's not, it's quite valuable just because her traits are really good. Arcanist in this comp, 2 Arcanist, giving 20 AP to your entire team is slightly more valuable than the other comps, just because this is an AP comp instead of, you know, we're looking at AD comp, AD comp, AD comp. So many AD comps. This is going to be the only real AP one just because Syndra is not viable as a main carry right now. And I think Syndra's played around a little bit differently just because you're playing like vertical faded. This is generally going to be what you're going to be looking for if you're playing around like flex AP items in the mid to late game or the early to mid game. And then you're just going to probably find your way. And finally, we have a reroll comp. Probably, well, not probably, it is the only reroll comp that's still good in the meta. I think Sentinel reroll's okay, but this comp is going to be the main one. Your main, I guess, like core is going to be these 5 units. Most of the time you want to be playing with this with either Mulched or Dryad from 2-1, whether this be from Augment or like sometimes there's going to be like a Trainer Sentinel that gives you a Dryad Crest. Anything that gets you like 4 Dryad early and then you want to cap out with 6 Dryad. Most of the time, without 6 Dryad, you're going to be playing Kayn Morgana for 4 Ghostly. Shen's also really easy to fit, so obviously once you have Ornn, then it's really easy to fit Shen. So like pretty much just try to find 4 Ghostly mid-game. You're rerolling Gnar and Kindred. Best in slot Gnar is BT Sterak's Titans, but you can go double Titans, you can go Sterak's, it doesn't really matter. You can go Hodge, all that fun stuff. Kindred just needs a mana item, I believe. Blue buff is the best. Shojin and Adaptive are completely fine, and she's going to be your Morala holder. Finally, just add some sort of random 3rd damage item. Nashor's, Jewel Gauntlet, Death Cap, all that fun stuff, Giant Slayer, all going to be pretty good. So this comp is relatively straightforward. If you guys played before the B patch, you'll know that this was the strongest comp back then. It has since been nerfed, but it is still probably the strongest comp in the game, but it obviously does not support multiple people. So if you notice someone else is already playing this comp, then there's so many options in the game right now that I would recommend that you probably don't contest them unless your spot for it is like exceptional, just because there's so many like different ways you can play the game right now. That's why I think that this patch actually has a lot of promise. Yeah, go out and try some of these comps for yourself. They are all tested already. Like I already tested them myself or with some of my friends. So it is like really good to play some of these, but like you're pretty much like, you can't just play this comp and expect to do well in every single spot, right? Like you can't, sorry, that wasn't a comp, but you can't just like play this comp and expect to do well every single comp. You do have to play around the spot that you're given in the early and mid game, and depending on the units you hit on level 8, so it does have a little bit of difficulty there, just like in terms of spot recognition, in terms of like decisions that affect your like long-term kind of like prospects for the rest of your game. So just, you know, keep that in mind. Yeah, and I guess that's the video. I actually will have another video. There's a comp that I didn't put in this video. I have another video coming out that will be explaining that a little bit more, and yeah, I guess, I mean, hopefully that'll come out in a couple days following this video. But until the next time, thanks for watching. If you guys like the content, obviously please feel free to like and subscribe. Otherwise you can find me in on Twitter at guubums, on Twitch at guubums. I also made a TikTok if you want to see like TikToks or like YouTube shorts that has my content. It's very similar to my YouTube content. It's at guubum. I don't have the S because someone yoinked my name. And if you guys are interested in coaching, that is something I do. You guys can find information about that in my Discord and the link in the description. All right, peace.